Narcissistic abuse is a game of Russian roulette. If you don't know what Russian roulette is, it is often seen in thriller movies or action movies where somebody loads a single bullet into the chamber of a gun, then he spins the chamber and then pulls the trigger. And if you're lucky, you're gonna survive. If not, well, you know what happens. You're gonna eat the bullet and you're dead. So how does this relate to narcissistic abuse, especially in a toxic relationship? First of all, narcissists have a tendency to snap, yeah? Their moods are unpredictable. You never know what you're gonna face when the narcissist comes through the door. Narcissists are also thrill seekers. And if they have a desperate need to supply that thrill, they can be capable of doing anything to you. What else would be similar to Russian roulette in a narcissistic relationship? As a matter of fact, it takes victims of narcissistic abuse about 7 times to finally leave an abusive relationship behind. And you have to understand, when you return, nothing is going to change. The narcissist may pretend to change or may change for a certain period of time, but then it all goes back to normal. Narcissists are not going to change, and they absolutely have no willingness to change. Don't even think of convincing them to go to therapy. Or worst case, go to therapy together with them, because they're gonna manipulate the therapist to no end. So every time you return, you basically pull the trigger. And every time you pull the trigger, it gets closer to that bullet. And the longer you stay, the chances are getting higher that you're gonna eat that bullet, figuratively or not. The reasons victims are stuck with a narcissist and in their abusive relationship, or the reason why they keep on returning. Because narcissistic abuse is similar to a gambling addiction. When you go to the casino and you put that coin into that slot machine, you experience what is called intermittent reinforcement. And that is the same technique that the narcissist applies. And that keeps you hooked in that relationship. Because just like you pull that arm on a slot machine, you're always hoping for the best. You're always hoping for change. You experience losses while you're gambling, but next time will be better, right? Next time will be better. You're gonna win that game. You're gonna win the big prize. In the meantime, you don't even notice how much money or how much energy and time you're wasting of your life. And this intermittent reinforcement creates the so-called trauma bond. And that is a very hard thing to break, even if you are able to leave the relationship. So how do you break that cycle? Before you leave a narcissist, it is very good to mentally prepare you for the aftermath of that relationship. That, of course, if you know that you're dealing with a narcissist. Narcissists have a tendency to come back. So it's important to break off all contact, or as much as you can. Maybe if you can't break contact, find a third party who will communicate with the narcissist so that you are safe and removed from the situation and able to heal. What a narcissist is most likely trying to do is to not only return entirely, but if he's currently entertaining somebody new, he might keep on breadcrumbing you. And this breadcrumbing, once again, is intermittent reinforcement that keeps you hoping and guessing and hoping for change and hoping that the narcissist will return. So intermittent reinforcement and breadcrumbing is to just give you enough of attention, enough of admiration, enough of hope for a change for the better in the future. And that keeps you hooked to a possibility, a fantasy maybe even. Again, you're wasting precious time and energy, and it also doesn't help you healing at all. In the aftermath of narcissistic abuse, when the trauma starts to unravel, you need to understand that you will experience an emotional roller coaster that is probably even worse than what you've experienced while you were in the relationship. And this is often why victims return into the relationship, so that they basically keep on dissociating and numbing themselves while they are experiencing the abuse. Because they cannot handle facing all the consequences of it. It's too painful. And let me tell you, it is painful. I've been through it myself. And I only achieved to survive because I went full on no contact. And that emotional roller coaster is basically the addiction. Imagine all these chemicals that were created while you were with the narcissist, because sometimes you had good times, sometimes you had bad times. It was a constant up and down, up and down. The physiological effects of it. The happiness, the sadness, the stress, the fight and flight. Dopamine, serotonin, adrenaline, oxytocin, cortisol. It's an explosive cocktail in your body. And since the narcissist provoked an excessive amount of these hormones in your body, you will literally experience withdrawal symptoms. Like an addict. Again, speaking of a gambling addiction. I personally remember what that felt like. I never took drugs in my entire life. Never will, never have. But I think this is exactly what a drug addiction feels like. When those withdrawal symptoms kicked in, when you're at the risk of reaching out to the narcissist again, which luckily I never did, I literally buried my face into a pillow on my bed and I was screaming so loudly. It felt as if there was a demon inside of me trying to rip me apart. I needed an exorcist. And speaking of Russian roulette again, I was experiencing these weird moments that I later called dodged a bullet moments. I don't know if you experienced something like that, but when I talk about dodged a bullet moments, they happened without a moment's notice. And they happened in the most innocent moments when I was not even thinking about all the trauma. But I think that my body and my brain were slowly trying to deal with that in the background. So what happened during a dodge the bullet moment, and please let me know in the comment section if you experienced the same. I'm very curious to know if anybody else has ever experienced that, because I never heard it from anybody else before, what I'm sharing with you now. So during those dodge the bullet moments, I was literally just sitting at my desk, doing some work, browsing the internet, reading something. I wasn't thinking about my relationship whatsoever. But at the time I was still dealing with a trauma overall. And suddenly I got this rush of adrenaline through my entire body. And you know what that felt like? Do you know what it's like when you're in a car and you're hitting the brakes to prevent an emergency and suddenly you see how close you are to the car in front of you and this whole adrenaline is rushing through your body because you experienced a moment of shock? That's exactly what it felt like. I wasn't even in my car. I was just sitting at my desk. I think those were the moments where my body and my brain were slowly making sense of what happened and that I was turning into a survivor of something that could have literally killed me. And that is why a relationship with a narcissist is similar to playing Russian roulette.